Oftentimes we come across individuals who report something to us, and they'll say, well, I was gonna call you this day and this day, but I didn't because I didn't want to bother you. And the fact of the matter is that we're there to serve the community, and if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the #Celebrate Columbus show. My name is Josh Burnett, and I'm super excited about today's episode of the show. I'm really just excited to get to introduce you to one of our heroes here in Columbus, Indiana. I'm a huge fan of our law enforcement here, and I know that several of you out there are the same with me. They bleed blue, so to speak, and really care about our law enforcement because every single day they put their lives on the line for us, and they keep us safe. And so I'm so glad to be able to get to do this episode with our Chief of Police, Jon Rohde. Thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Josh. Appreciate it.
Hey, glad to get to do this with you. And at the time of this recording, he's just recently celebrated a birthday, and really glad to have him here in the studio today. Jon, for those who might not know you, at least personally, tell us a little bit about the Chief of Police in Columbus, who you are, and your journey to here to become the Chief of Columbus.
Yeah, and I typically don't like to talk a whole lot about myself because the way we view the police department is it's not any one person. It's a team effort, not only internally but throughout the community as well. But since you asked, I'll answer the question.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
But I grew up in northern Indiana. My dad's a Lutheran minister, and grew up always wanting to be in law enforcement. Went to Indiana University in Bloomington and got a political science and criminal justice degree there. They have a program there where you can go through and be kind of like a security guard, and then in the summer you can attend the police academy, so you can have all your law enforcement credentials, and then you finish up your collegiate education, and you graduate with your degree in law enforcement credentials. And so as I was going through that process, I had been recruited by the chief at the time, came over to Bloomington and did some recruiting, and I had never heard of Columbus, but I came and visited and looked like a great community. And so I ended up getting hired here, starting off as a patrol officer like everybody does. And early on in my career, I had some interaction with an officer who was soon to retire, and one of his comments to me was, son, you need to figure out what you're going to do with your life once law enforcement's over, because it's not something you can do forever. And I've planned for this day my whole life, but now I don't know what I'm going to do. So I thought about that and decided I was very intrigued with the law, and applied for law school and was accepted. And so I worked third shift while going to law school for 3.5 years. Graduated, passed the bar exam, and worked full-time as a police officer and did some legal work on the side for several years. And at that time, as I was going through law school, I really couldn't pursue any advancement within the department because I had other obligations. But once that was complete, then I went into the narcotics division and worked in an undercover role for approximately 4 years. And then in 2012, I took on an administrative role within the police department where I oversaw the narcotics detectives, the administrative civilian staff. And we also began an accreditation process, and so I oversaw that at the time. And so after that time, the current chief retired, and I was asked to fill the role of chief, which is where I sit today. So
that's awesome. I really appreciate just hearing a little bit more about your journey. And not only can you arrest me, but you can actually prosecute me as well, which is pretty cool. That's a unique skill set to have. That's why I try to stay on the straight and narrow. But anyway, something that you had talked about in there is that you were in narcotics for a period of time. And for those people who live in Columbus or really in the Midwest, I know it's a big focus of ours to crack down on the opioid crisis and anything to do with drugs. We're just trying to do all that we can, and I know you are as well, to not make this a problem that our children have to continue to be around and to live in. What are some of the things that you guys try to do in the police department to accomplish that goal of pushing drugs out of Columbus?
Yeah, and a great question. And when I first thought about this and how to really relay the concept of the drug issue to the community, came up with something hopefully that everybody can relate to, and that's a simple supply and demand concept. And so what law enforcement focuses on, what we do on a daily basis is attack the supply. We work at trying to find out where the drugs are coming from, prevent them from coming into our community. The flip side of that is the demand. And so as long as there's the demand, the supply is going to get filled one way or another. So as we're eliminating some of the supplies that we're aware of and investigating, different supply avenues are coming in. Mm-hmm. And so the community as a whole needs to focus on attacking the demand, and this is where the ASAP group is currently working on. Very supportive and involved in their efforts, and applaud everybody that's working on that on a daily basis. And we can really see some progress being made within our community in regards to that. But when it comes to the demand, law enforcement is just a piece of the puzzle, mm-hmm. And there's a lot of players that go into that. And thankfully, we've got a community where everybody's at the table wanting to do the right thing and affect change.
I was just thinking about something while you were talking, and I hope it's okay. We'll kind of dive in a little bit deeper. When I was a kid growing up here in Columbus, the main thing that people would talk to us about was like marijuana. But we've talked, and there's a lot of drugs out there now that either kids are being introduced to, or we'll hear about that other people are doing, like the meth, like the heroin, like pills. What are some ways that I've got a couple kids that are young. You've got kids. What are some ways that we as parents can partner with you to help educate our children about the long list of opportunities to be derailed by drugs?
Yeah, and so since there's been a lot of attention brought to the heroin issue, and the reason for that is that it's very lethal, mm-hmm. more so than other drugs, and we unfortunately lose a lot of lives as a result of that. And so the message and what we hear from younger adults nowadays is that we find using meth is, well, it's not heroin, and that's very troubling. And the education piece in this is that minor drugs like marijuana, prescription pills, those are all gateway drugs. Mm-hmm. And the reason that we're seeing a variety of drugs, your heroin laced with fentanyl, and your candy Skittles, if you've heard of that, mm-hmm. Are because people are searching for a better high. Mm-hmm. And once you're introduced into the drug realm, even at a lower level, it progresses as you're always trying to get a better high. And so even entering into that is very dangerous because it will lead to other things. Mm. And that's the education piece. I think that your child and my children need to understand is it's not just marijuana. It's not just a prescription pill. Those things will lead down a bad path.
Yeah, I appreciate you talking a little bit about that, because I know it's something that we can partner with you on, by doing a better job of helping educate our kids. We were talking a little bit off camera about, safety, crime in Columbus. And, overall, I think we both can agree that the serious crime, the murders and the violent crimes are not something that we're hearing a lot about, but more like the property crime is things that are going on here. But, for those who don't know a lot about the crime and safety of Columbus, how are we doing? And what are some of the areas that you're trying to focus on to help us get better?
Absolutely. So the way that crime is broken down is violent crime, which is crime against a person where somebody's being injured, and property crime, that's where your thefts, where property is taken from somebody. And we evaluate ourselves with cities our size and our population range nationally, and look at the national averages on where we fall in those categories. And when it comes to violent crime, which is the safety of our city, we're extraordinarily safe city to live in.
Mm-hmm.
People don't need to walk down the streets worried that something bad's going to happen to them, because it's very rare for that to happen. On the flip side, property crime, we rate very poorly, and that has a direct correlation with our drug issue, because as people are searching for drugs, they oftentimes become unemployed and still need money and resources to obtain the drugs. And so people in our community do need to worry about things being stolen out of their cars, thefts from retail areas, and other property crimes. And that's an area of focus that we have, is our violent crime is so low that we want to, there's not a whole lot of reduction we can do, but we want to maintain and or reduce that violent crime, while also reducing the property crime in our community. One of the major, I think your second part of your question is, what are we doing about that?
Yeah.
And so we're a very progressive department to kind of match our city.
Yeah.
We've researched and have implemented what's called intelligence-led policing program. And so we have a designated unit, a civilian criminal intelligence analyst, and then some officers also assigned to this unit. And their job is to collect any information that we have. I refer to it as silos of information. So the sheriff's department might have a silo of information, the state police has a silo of information, and even internally we have different divisions. We have our officers that work the street, we have our detectives, we have our narcotics, and there's all these silos of information. And so their job is to basically be the umbrella of all that. Not only collecting all that into one central area, but to analyze it and say, what does this tell us about who's committing crimes and what crimes are being committed and where are they being committed at. And it really gives us ability to police smarter. And so that's really been the focus of implementing that this year, and going into 2018 is going to be our primary focus, is how can we better polish the stone and make it work to where we're having a substantial effect on those property crimes.
That's cool. I'd never heard of that before, and appreciate you explaining that. And it sounds like, a big piece of that is the community helping you all enforce that and really get better at that. So the question that, we like to ask people when they come on the show, and, because I really believe that people watching and participating in social media can do some really good things, how can we as a community support you and be a part of continuing to make Columbus a safe and great place to live?
Yeah, thank you. And I would say twofold. Is one is very simple. Is oftentimes we come across individuals who report something to us, and they'll say, well, I was gonna call you this day and this day, but I didn't because I didn't want to bother you. And the fact of the matter is that we're there to serve the community, and if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right, and we much rather be called to something and it be nothing than not be called and it turns out that we could have gained some information from that, or it was actually something. And so the first thing is, like I said, is very simple, is if something isn't right in your neighborhood, contact us. Let us know, provide us that information, because like I said, it will go into a silo and ultimately be analyzed with all kinds of different information. And oftentimes we already have that information. Other times it might be similar information with just a little extra information or piece that we're able to solve a large amount of crimes because somebody took the time to contact us and let us know. So the first is just, don't be afraid to call us. That's what we're there for, and what we want you to do. Second thing is, law enforcement is a grueling profession, and there's a lot of long days, long weeks, different shifts, and officers are put into split-second decisions, life and death situations, and then are criticized for things that they do as well. And it's not that officers don't make mistakes; everybody makes mistakes, but just to be supportive of our law enforcement. Again, going back to what I said before, we don't see ourselves as police and then the community. We are integrated in the community, and one of the things that we've really worked hard on is building relationships. We offer all kinds of programs for youth, all kinds of programs for adults. We do a lot of public engagement. We have a lot of neighborhood watch groups that we actively participate in, and so we really want to build that trust and those relationships with everybody in the community, so they feel like that we're not just somebody in uniform. We're somebody that they know and somebody they can talk to and depend on.
That's great to know, just because I know that there's several people out there that want to help and they don't always know how to. So to hear that from you, it's reassuring that we can make a difference, and that also when we do our job, then you guys are doing yours. And so that's a great way of explaining that. Yeah,
and another aspect to that too is, and I think anybody, if they reflect on their job or their family or how they handle their kids or whatever the case may be, is that oftentimes just as humans we hear a bit of information and jump to a conclusion. And I think with anything, but particularly law enforcement, is make sure you have all the facts before jumping to conclusion if you hear something, because there's always two sides to every story. But that's not only something that we could all do better as it relates to law enforcement, but we can all do that better in any aspect of our life.
Yeah, that's good. I really appreciate you saying that. Well, Chief, I really just appreciate your time. I know that you're a busy guy, and I've seen you in many different places serving and protecting our community. I really appreciate you coming by the studio.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thanks again for having me. And as we talked about before, I know you were going to refer to me as Chief, but
yes.
As a community member, I'd like to be called John, because I'm just another person trying to do my part in the community. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, before we go, one of the questions we like to ask everyone is, John, why do you celebrate Columbus?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I have lived in 4 places in my life. I was born in Missouri, lived there for a couple of years till my parents moved us to northern Indiana, where I essentially grew up. And then I spent some time in Bloomington getting my education, and then ended up here in 2001. And this is hit me a couple months ago that this is a big year for me here in Columbus, and it's because at this point in time, this is the place that I've lived a majority of my life, and so no longer am I saying I'm going to go back home, because home is now Columbus, and that's a big deal for me, and I just celebrate the fact that this is home for me, that I met my wife, I'm raising my kids in this community. It's a great, diverse community where people genuinely care for each other and want to see improvement, and is a progressive community overall. And so that's why I celebrate Columbus.
Awesome. Well, that's really cool. Well, appreciate you being on the show, and thanks for all you do, and thanks to all of your officers. I know that each of them, like I said, as we began the show, each one of them put their lives on the line every day for us, and they go through a lot so that we can be safe, and so we're really appreciative of that.
Thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity to get to know you better.
You got it.
Thanks.
Well, Columbus, thank you so much for tuning in to this special edition of the Hashtag Celebrate Columbus. I know I've been wanting to talk with our chief for a long time, and I've gotten to talk with him a lot off camera, and I just want you to know how special of a guy he is and how committed he and his crew are to making Columbus a place that all of us can celebrate. So thank you for watching this edition of the Hashtag Celebrate Columbus show.